I'm Scott Allen Miller, and this is my daily vlog of life in Nicaragua. But today is not one of my daily vlogs. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about Nicaraguan real estate, and specifically whether you should be building or buying, because anytime you're going to be finding a place to live, that's a decision you have to make, a pre-built structure or a new one. So let's answer that question. What makes sense for you in 2022? Under normal market conditions, if there can be such a thing as normal, building and buying are more or less financially equal. They should be. Over time, they're going to equal out in any market, but sometimes that takes a long time to do. So we need to talk about 2022 and how the factors for building and buying play out in today's market, specifically in Nicaragua. If you're looking at, say, the United States, your factors are dramatically different. So this is important. Okay, so one, buying. In Nicaragua, in 2022, we are at the market low, possibly a 150-year market low in house values. That means there has never been, and there is likely to never be, at least within our lifetimes, an opportunity to buy existing properties as low as they are today. Sometimes you'll find properties at 10% of their traditional value. Typically, it's going to be closer to half. And of course, there's lots of people who aren't willing to sell, and maybe they shouldn't be. Just because something has dropped in value does not mean that you should feel obligated to sell it just because someone offers you less than you paid or less than its value to you. But of people who are selling homes in Nicaragua, the prices have dropped dramatically. And that goes for homes, that goes for rents, that goes for businesses, right? The market is low. It is coming back. We expect it to come back in force, but right now it is still really low. So this is the biggest factor for buying pre-existing structures. You will never likely see an opportunity anywhere near this again. Possibly anywhere, but certainly in Nicaragua. If you were to look at the US market or the Canadian market right now, you see exactly the opposite. There is a shortage of homes on the market. There is a lot of shift of where people are living and working. And because of that, it is driving massive house sales at numbers that have not been really seen ever in the US market. So while looking at that, the US prices for buying pre-existing are through the roof, pun intended, and you're often going to want to build because building may be cheaper. Here in Nicaragua, that's the opposite, and that's surprising to people coming from North America. Why is Nicaragua specifically completely flipped to the US? But that's how nations work, right? Housing markets are generally isolated to a country or to some degree a region, and so just because the US and Canada are at a high right now, a lot of the world is at a norm and some of it is at a low. These things just track separately from each other. It depends on local populations, local workforces, local economies, and a lot of other factors. Right now, some of the big stuff in Nicaragua, the population is not booming as it was. They have longer maintained houses than in the US. The US needs to build more to keep an inventory. Just the way that these things work are very different. Even building materials make a big difference in this. Then another big factor, and excuse me for the wind and the sound of the ocean, I'm actually recording right on the beach in Ponaloya. So for building, however, we have a completely separate set of factors. As I mentioned, in the United States, there is a boom of houses. In addition to selling existing houses, there is a booming construction. If you live in the US, you're aware. Building a house is difficult because there's no builders available, they're all busy, and the construction materials are at an unbelievable premium in price because everybody's trying to get them. There just aren't enough materials available, concrete, wood, and so forth. Because of this, building has gone up in price along with pre-existing houses, and this is expected because the push of higher, more expensive pre-existing houses will raise the cost of construction materials naturally. Not as much, but it will raise it, so you should see them track in some way together. Here in Nicaragua, however, you have to remember that the housing market is low, so does construction material also get cheaper? No. Houses are a national market, and you can even argue that they're a city market. Like, if there's lots of extra houses in Managua and there aren't in Leon, Managua will get cheap and Leon will not. So even at a national level, you don't generally see prices track really heavily compared to each other. in most cases. Like in the United States, you may see too many houses on the market in Dallas, so Dallas stays cheap, but New York City runs out of them, not currently a problem, and so skyrockets, right? Regions will have their own pricing. With construction materials, however, it is not nationally based. Concrete, wood, and other materials needed for construction are actually handled throughout the world, more or less on a single market. So if one large country like the US or China starts gobbling up construction materials and raises the price, that raises the price of construction materials for every country in the world. So everybody worldwide is facing a very large increase in the cost of construction. So new houses simply cost more everywhere. Even if the labor here in Nicaragua is roughly flat as far as price, the cost of the materials to build with are more expensive. And you say, well, why would the higher cost in the US cause the cost in Nicaragua to go up? How closely are they tied? It's as simple as this. First of all, geographically, they're so close that a ship that is shipping wood or concrete into Nicaragua or into the United States that decided it could get a better price in the other market could simply redirect and barely notice that it made a change. And of course, anyone who bought materials, if you were able to get cheap materials in Nicaragua, you would buy them all up and then ship them to the United States. The difference is enough, they would easily pay for it. You could make money forever if that was the case. Of course, you can't, because the prices automatically adjust to make sure that doesn't happen. Of course, one person can do it with one shipment, but it quickly self-corrects so that that doesn't happen, much as the currency market does that. You can make money trading currencies, but not for long, because they will correct. They have to, right? You can't maintain a disparity for very long. So because of that, building costs in Nicaragua have gone up roughly the same as they have in the US and Canada, but the housing market has gone way down. So under normal conditions, on an average year, say 2015, the choice between pre-built and new construction would have been mostly what matters to you. If you really like the custom options you can get by building your own, or if it's really important to you to get the speed and efficiency of taking something that's already built, if you want to be able to make things that no one else has, or you want to be able to stand in a place and see it finished before you ever make a decision to buy, those things would drive your decision primarily. But now, it's a big financial decision. If you're going to build today, chances are you are going to pay a premium at a time when pre-built is at a discount. That means that instead of investing with the market to get maximum value out of what you put into it, you're going to actually invest against the market and end up overpaying at a time you don't have to. So, for example, a house that normally would be $100,000 here in Nicaragua easily is going to sell for $75,000, possibly much less, but easily $75,000 today. So if you were to buy it today and the market corrects, you would make 33% simply through the market correction. No growth, just market correction. If you were to build that same house today, it would easily cost you $125,000, and that's a real rough number of what additional it would cost. And so when the market corrects, you would lose 25% of your investment, or $25,000. I guess that's a little bit more, 20% of your investment, simply through the market correction. The differential is much larger. That's 45%. So it's not that you have a middle ground. You have to either get a great value or overspend. You're very unlikely to get something at general market value. So that puts the swing heavily towards pre-built. So my recommendation, and I hesitate on being a direct recommendation type person, because there's always a reason that you may want to build custom. There's always a reason you may want to buy pre-existing. And of course, you have to think about what matters to you and think about the deal you're getting. Maybe you get a good deal on construction. Maybe you're getting a terrible deal on the one that's pre-built, but you really love it. It's in the place you want. Maybe you just can't help it. That's fine. You do your math, set your emotions aside as much as you can, and make a good decision that protects you financially but still gives you what you need for your own housing. But this is a time, if ever, I'm going to say you need to wait on building. It doesn't make sense to build today outside of the most extreme circumstances. You want to take advantage of the fact that the market is incredibly good for pre-built homes. And there are so many pre-built homes, it's not a problem of there not being enough. Of course, if you find a pristine bit of beach, like out here where I'm standing right now, where there's no houses whatsoever, there's no house down there for miles, right? If you want to build down there, you're out of luck as far as pre-built houses. It's not possible, so of course you're gonna have to build. You may wanna consider waiting on building because maybe the price of construction materials will go down in the next year or two. That's worth considering. It's also worth considering that the cost may stay up for a very long time. We don't know how long other markets are gonna be in boom. And even if the US leaves its boom, maybe China will go into a construction boom and take over the high cost, even though it's switching where it's happening. So it's a dangerous thing to gamble on. So consider that that is a possibility, of course. But if you're going to be, if you are in a position where you have any amount of choice whatsoever, consider that buying a pre-built house is going to protect you financially in amazing ways, like it will never have done before or likely again. So I can't really recommend it enough, short of saying you just have to, right? You don't just have to, but my recommendation is extremely strong. It is a bad time to build, and I am a person who purchased, now consider this though, I purchased property, right, with the intent of building. The property was at a really good price because the market is low. It was a very unique bit of property, so I didn't get the massive discount that I might in other situations, but I did get a good price, I feel. Of course, I've said in other episodes, you never really know what a good price is here in Nicaragua. Nobody does. And anyone who tells you does, that they do, is being a little bit sketchy. They can make some educated guesses. They can tell you how they're making those guesses. They may have valuable input, but nobody knows. Nobody. And especially when you're dealing with, you know, even here on the beach in Ponaloya, there's so few properties, not so few selling, so few in existence, that you can't make a really good educated guess of what something is worth. A single house selling would potentially completely change the perception of the value of the market. You really just have to guess. And any given property is gonna be so unique that you just can't compare. But right now, we're waiting to build, but we got the land at a really good price. And especially right now, even though the price may not be the best, the competition for the land is very low. So that's also good. You can come in, take your time to decide on land to build in the future, get a great deal, or a good deal at least, and hold on to it until you're ready. Maybe buy land at someplace that's your dream home destination, but then go buy another home where you can live until the time becomes right, whenever that is. Or, of course, consider renting to just wait on the building process if you don't want to go through buying and selling another home. But there is a value to buying and selling if you find a place you want to stay in long term, because of course you can play the market a little bit and hopefully ride the market correction to a bit of profit. But nothing wrong with renting, nothing wrong with hedging your bets, and all of that conventional wisdom that you should always buy, not rent, is of course things that people tell poorer people who have not worked or studied finance in order to convince them not to buy the houses that they want to buy. That is not good advice. There are certainly loads of times where renting is the wiser financial decision. Not always, nothing's always, but there's this very, very standard conventional wisdom, oh, you've got to buy, and that is not at all the case. Buying costs the average person a lot of money. The average person loses on buying a house. So it's important to remember. Not everybody, lots of people make out great with it, but the average person loses, and that's looking at the numbers going back for 130 years in the US market. Other markets that are more volatile, yes, there may be some averages of gains or losses slightly different, but the overall housing market stays pretty flat. That's why we can talk about market corrections, right? Housing markets stay roughly flat over time, and they have to. If you really study economics, there's no real way for the cost of housing to change more than a percentage or two versus the income of the country. They just have to be locked together, because the moment that they're not, you build more houses because the cost of building doesn't really change. Of course, it does momentarily, but not over the long haul. Building materials will change if they need to, the way that people live, the size of houses, lots of things will change to adjust the market to maintain housing at roughly a certain percentage of average income. Just is how it works. That protection means that you have the protection of knowing you can't just randomly, blindly buy real estate and have it make money. That does not happen anywhere. When markets are the way they are right now in Nicaragua, you have a really, really good chance of doing really well because you're playing against them, towards the market correction. Thanks for joining me. If you have any questions, ask them below. I'm happy to answer anything that I can. I hope this is helpful. I know a lot of people on this channel are looking at moving to Nicaragua, and of course, anytime you're moving, you're talking about renting or buying something, or building, of course, and you all have to consider which of these things make sense for you. And remember that, like, renting doesn't preclude you from buying in the future. Buying land does not preclude you from holding off and building sometime later. That's a great option. Be prepared, but also plan and run the numbers. Use math. I am a financial consultant for many, many years on Wall Street, and I do business consulting for 23 years. So things that I tell businesses, large businesses, all the time: don't act emotionally. Your house is a financial investment. Of course, if it's your retirement house, at some point emotions do play in. I understand that. Be prepared that if it's a house you love and nothing else is going to make you happy, maybe you just have to get it and just accept whatever financial pain that comes with that. That's okay. But make sure you're acknowledging that and making a rational decision that your emotions are worth X amount of money, because really, houses are an investment vehicle. Treat them as such. Use math and logic. Check the markets, and don't put yourself in a position where you're in danger because you bought something recklessly. And I know it's scary buying or even just renting in Nicaragua, because we know none of us are that familiar with the market, and that makes it just that much tougher. But it's really a good market to get into. I am not in any way telling anyone not to jump into the Nicaraguan market. Absolutely get into the Nicaraguan market. This is the best time ever. Just do so with your eyes open. Run the numbers, ask questions, and think carefully about how the person you're asking from is incentivized to give you information, because a lot of people out there make their money on getting the prices as high as possible, no matter who they say they're representing. So you gotta be careful that you don't have someone who's trying to drive up your prices. Sometimes the prices do need to be high, because sometimes things really are expensive. That's okay. But be aware, this market is far lower than people are going to generally let on to you that it is. And of course, if you're looking at the market from a distance, nearly all Nicaraguan resources do not get online and do not have a reasonable way to reach out and interact with foreigners who are interested in the market. So when you typically engage with people from a distance, you are getting people who are targeting you as a high profit possibility to make it worthwhile for them to try to sell you things, and their profit is tied to getting those prices up just naturally, right? So by being in the position that the people who watching this channel are, you are naturally in a position of being easy pickings or a prime target for someone who's looking to raise the price as much as possible and convince you that things aren't as cheap as that they are, that the market is really hot and everyone's buying right now. They're not. Certainly some things are buying and selling. I know, I bought, so clearly it must be true, but everyone we talk to, every place we go, everyone's like, no, everything's just sitting here on inventory, and most of the places aren't even listing what's available because it's not worth the effort, because there's no buyers. So think critically. Are the people you're talking to giving you advice that would be incentivized by them, or is it something that just makes sense logically, and can they explain why it's true? Thanks for joining me. Ask your questions, like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.